In every organization, there's a need for change. In every individual's life, there's a need for change. But change does not come easy until we find solution. Good morning. My name is Adeyemi Adetoye, a student from Liberty University, focusing on the graduate class, Organization, Consulting and Change. My theme in today's presentation is restorative practices in consulting organizations, like Just Outcomes and Three Stories Consulting Company. In this slide, as a consultant in the individual consulting and graduate student of Liberty University from the School of Behavioral Sciences, my goal here is to evaluate some individual research in Lohmann's 2003 book. In this individual consulting presentation, my selected topics are 1. Module 5, Chapter 16, Stress and its Management. In Module 6, I selected Chapter 20. The topic is Intercultural Communication. In Module 7, Chapter 25, I selected Appreciative Inquiry. In Module 8, Chapter 26, I selected Organizational Change and Development, Intervention Steps. The purpose of these topics are to show that sustainable organizational change is realized by intentionally developing and creating practical and collaborative change. My goal, however, is to evaluate restorative practices and encourage a mixed culture in consulting organizations that will focus on leveraging internal strengths and positive prospects through effective approaches. As a believer, please permit me to briefly integrate the scriptures into the selected topics. Thanks. My listeners, in this module, Chapter 16 in Lohmann's book, the co-writer, Fiedler, 2003, believed that stress is the body and mind's natural reaction to pressures, demands, or challenges. It can trigger a fight or flight response that can release hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. While short-term stress can boost alertness, chronic stress can also cause significant physical and mental health issues, including headaches, insomnia, anxiety, and heart issues. In this slide, I review the empirical studies of Kant et al., Cantapano et al., and Rogansi et al. To discuss how to manage or approach the issue of stress. To begin with Kant et al. 2020, they presented an automated obstructive stress reduction system like heart rate, variability, skin temperature, breathing. They tag this as restorative practices. They design it for consumer-grade smart bands to detect and manage stress in real time. The goal is they address the stigma of stress for psychological safety by encouraging yoga and mindfulness, as well as top-down shift in norms in an organization. The second study I reviewed is Cantapano et al. 2023. They focus on resilience, training, and job design to foster role clarity. They believe that safe, practices, structure checking, mindfulness, and relaxation techniques should be effective or were effective in decreasing stress, anxiety, and burnout of organization workers. In addition, Rogansin and Toll 2024, they suggested or they encouraged the organizational consultants to consider mindfulness-based and relaxation intervention as the most effective techniques for changing cortisol levels. Therefore, as a consultant presenting to an organization, presenting to you as my listeners today, there's a need to address stress. And this need requires you and I to focus on a structured 4-pillar approach based on these 3 articles that I've just mentioned: culture, workload, individual, and support. The goal is to position stress as an operational risk factor that, when managed well, it can boost productivity, retention, and performance. Like I said earlier, that please permit me to integrate Bible into the selected topics. In Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 to 7, reading from New International Version, the Bible says that do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. Managing stress at work requires bringing burdens to God rather than carrying them, fostering a peaceful mind that leads to wiser, less reactionary, and more constructive decision making during change. In this slide 5, intercultural communication is the topic. In Model 2, Enzari 2003 present that intercultural communication is an exchange of knowledge, idea, thoughts, concepts, and emotions among individuals with mixed cultural backgrounds. However, after evaluating this study, I learned that the author did not highlight how to address the issues of learning, self-disclosure, connotation, foreign language transformation, and agents of culture in organizational consulting environment. In this case, I reviewed 3 studies, which I will talk about in the next slide, slide 6. In this slide 6, intercultural communication, this article or this slide will describe some strategies, steps, and expected outcomes of intercultural communication. Like Barres and Todd 2021, they highlighted the failures of a post-racial society to foster cultural awareness and clarity in language. Their goal is that values, customs, and communication styles should serve as a map or resources, as well as restorative practices for navigating interactions, for preventing misunderstandings. Likewise, ISUS 2021 examine intercultural communication in terms of context adaptation. The idea is to ensure that there is fast globalization and population heterogeneity. This means that practical connection across mixed cultural and linguistic backgrounds is important. Instead of translate idioms or concepts literally, for instance, the author believed that there is a need to listen actively and search for phrases in the target language that trigger the same functional or emotional response. Last but not the least, the third author in this topic is Paternotte and Thought 2017, they examine knowledge of active listening and priorities of non-native clients regarding intercultural communication with doctors. In many cultures, bypassing the agents of change is significant break of protocol. What this means to Paternotte and Thought 2017 is that in organization consulting, a skilled client-centered approach, emotional resonance, and context awareness are more valued than the physician's ethnic experience to address issues of learning, self-disclosure, connotations, foreign language transformations, and agent of culture. In Revelation chapter 7 verse 9, the Bible says that after this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. What this verse highlights is that God values diversity, which means that effective, respective intercultural communication in the workplace should honor the diverse nation, tribe, and language represented, ensuring every organization is treated with dignity and unity, because in Genesis chapter 12 verse 20, Genesis chapter 12 verse 20, like I said, says that then Pharaoh gave orders about Abraham to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had. Here, Pharaoh's order depicts that the Lord values diversity, and he will always protect his promise and family by creating shared understanding between his people from diverse backgrounds. In chapter 7, in slide 7, in this slide, I consider appreciative inquiry as the main topic in this theme. In chapter 25 of module 3, in Lomas 2003 book, Peter Sorensen and Teresa Yinger from Benedictine University, Arizona, argued that appreciative inquiry is a strength-based organization development approach that promotes transformation by concentrating on positive cause rather than addressing issues. They move away from traditional service-based consulting, fixing what is broken, towards amplifying existing successes. The point they are trying to make now is that AI requires a significant shift in mindset or implementation stage. In this slide, my selected topic for appreciative inquiry include Enoch and Thor 2022. They believe that healthcare managers or leaders must be guided to see that their role is to unlock potential rather than simply drive results. Likewise, they have important principles, 4 to 5 principles that they mention. Please, listener, allow me to pay more attention to these principles in this slide. A key tenet of appreciative inquiry, according to this author, Enoch and 2022, is the simultaneity principle. They believe that every individual organization that requires change must learn how to ask a question, because questions have the potential to turn people's attention in a different direction. Another principle is anticipatory principle. According to this author, they believe that appreciative inquiry should suggest that images or mental pictures have future positivities or have positive life or positive integration. What they are trying to say is that anticipatory principle suggests that images or mental pictures that we have of the future inspire us or can inspire us into actions that can make them happen. If there's an image that captures the imagination and enthusiasm of an organization or team, then people will start moving towards it. One of the strengths of this is that it is possibility-centric rather than problem-centric. This one takes us to the third principle, constructionist principle. According to Enoch and 2022, they believe that one of the tenets of AI is that words create words. The word and images that AI researchers use will also have a significant impact. In poetic principle, they suggest that we can choose what we study or focus on, and whatever we focus on will grow. Finally, in positive principle, it claims that positive question will always lead to positive change. The point here is that whenever a consulting organization is faced with implementation challenges, like difficulty with measuring outcomes, resistance to cultural shift, or neglect of serious problems, or in a situation where the focus on positive is misused to avoid confronting or even suppress critical problems, difficult emotions, it is recommended as a consultant that such a company or an individual should ask questions. One, focus on future, mental pictures, telling and retelling of stories, and be positive. The second article on appreciative inquiry is Magnussen and Thor, 2019. They examine how AI acts as a transformative methodology and restorative practice. They focus on what works well among nursing staff in Norway. Their goal was that using AI rather than traditional deficit-based methods can encourage sustainable and innovative practices. Merrill and Thor 2022 is the third journal. They examine 33 studies, to evaluate the impact of AI on healthcare quality and safety. This review, published in the British Medical Journal Open Quality, highlighted that most included studies were of low quality. Therefore, the point is that with the development of innovation, appreciative inquiry, interviews, and partnership equality, people can have access to restorative practices to create positive organizational culture provides. In Philippians chapter 4 verse 8, the Bible says that finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, we should think about such things. Now, what he's trying to say now is, as one of my favorite verses, is that this topic, appreciative inquiry, should be built on identifying the positive core, as Paul instructs us to focus our minds on the good, noble, and admirable things, which means looking for what is working well in an organization rather than dwelling on deficits. In these concept issues and intervention steps, in chapter 6, module 8 of Loman's book, I reviewed Hill and Thor 2003, who describe organization change and development OCD as changing organizational employee schedules to promote flexibility, a degree of pervasiveness of the change initiative, or using pre-existing organizational structures to drive necessary adaptations. They believe that OCD stems from the integration of coaching into organizational strategies at various levels. However, there is a need for intervention steps in this study to formulate the organizational consultant's ability to work with existing practices. And that's why I selected some studies for these intervention steps. In this slide, I reviewed Gordon's and Todd 2022, Podlar's 2022, and Von Thiele, Schwanz, and Todd 2020 studies. Gordon and Todd 2022 analyze how and why modifications to complex are implemented within culturally competent kidney transplant care programs. They use what they called consolidated framework of implementation research to analyze or to show the pre-existing culture and resources to drive necessary adaptations. They conclude that assessing the implementation context is important for managing or maintaining intervention fidelity in complex environment. The second review is from F. Leg and Todd 2022. They explore how coaching acts as a protective buffer to mitigate negative impact of organizational change on employee. Likewise, Fontainely, Schwanzel, and Todd 2020, they introduce what they call Sigtunian principles, a set of 10 evidence-based guidelines or restorative practices designed to maximize the impact of organizational interventions by bridging the gap between research and practice. Their goal or their key principles in their study include ensuring active participation, aligning intervention with existing organizational levels, and adopting an iterative approach where intervention are seen or are constantly refined through observation and reflection. This topic aligns with the biblical principles of stewardship and wisdom. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, the Bible says that we should not conform to the pattern of this world, but we must, as believers, be transformed by the renewing of our mind. Then we'll be able to test and approve what God's will is good, pleasing and perfect will. It means that true organizational change and development can only come from transforming our perspective or renewing our mind. This requires departing from standard, often chaotic patterns of this world to implement thoughtful, renewed, and positive approaches to development. I hope you are following me, my listeners, and I know that you have some questions. But before you ask your question, please, let me round up with this summary. Today's theme and topic flow together to form a strength-based inclusive approach to organizational and individual transformation and mitigate stress and fosters innovation by applying appreciative inquiry through effective intercultural communication and stress management as a form of significant restorative practices, you or your consulting organizations can be able to implement sustainable organizational change and development steps that will leverage positive core by systematically identifying and building upon an organization's existing strengths, successes, and practices rather than focusing on the negative belief or deficits achieved, because everyone wants a lasting success and promote organizational productivity. Don't you? Let me finalize this presentation by saying that whenever you, your previous organizations, or the present consulting organizations are faced with implementation challenges, like difficulty with measuring outcomes, resistance to cultural shift, neglect of serious problems, or in a situation where the focus on positive is misused to avoid confronting or even suppress critical problems, difficult emotions, or shadow side organizational issues. As a consultant, I recommend that you or your company should ask questions. 1. Focus on future mental picture. 2. Tell and retell your stories. 3. Be positive. 4. And lastly, but not the least, be prayerful. Thank you for listening. Before you ask your question, please, let's move to the references in the next slide. In this slide, I have different references. You may want to find more information on restorative practices in organizational consulting by reviewing the following references. Finally, this slide is the continuation of the previous slide. This final slide also has some relevant references to review. Thank you once again. God bless. Please, in case you have questions, let me know. Thank you.